everyone, and welcome to The Hash, your daily beat on crypto and culture. My name is Naomi Brockwell, and I'm delighted to be joined by other wonderful co-hosts. We have Ben Powers, Jen Sanasi, Zach Seward, and filling in for Will Foxley, we have Anna Baydakova. And we're going to kick off the day by talking about a new bill to clarify crypto regulation. So, Zach, what have we got there?
Yep. So a little handful of members of Congress introduced Tuesday morning a bill that seeks to convene the CFTC and the SEC and U.S. lawmakers to get clarity on where crypto falls in the regulatory regime. Right now in the U.S., it's a bit unclear. There's a lot of confusion around what is a security in the crypto space and what is a commodity. So what this bill seeks to accomplish is clarity on that front. And I think it's, we talked about the IRS yesterday taking this stuff seriously. And here's yet another example of more action in D.C. to clarify this emerging asset class. I think it's a good thing. Obviously, the devil's going to be in the details here, but seeking consensus among these parties seems to be the main thrust of this bill. I'm going to toss this to Naomi, who is always quick to praise government and government officials. So I'm curious for her laudatory statements about the said development.
Yeah, Let's just dive right into how much I think creating another government agency is a great idea. No, I mean, this is mixed. And as you said, the devil is in the details in this. It does talk about having lots of representatives from the wider community. They talk about larger businesses, smaller businesses, researchers in the space, all of this. This could go so many different ways. If they actually get genuine feedback for people in the industry, it could be a good thing because you have different regulatory bodies right now that are kind of clashing against each other. Meanwhile, people in the space who are using this stuff building businesses don't know which way to look because one government agency says, well, we're saying that this is a security, and the other is saying, well, this is a commodity, and the other is saying, well, this is a currency, and they're all these different, opinions that are getting thrown at us. And meanwhile, businesses are saying, we have no idea what you want from us, and you have no idea what you're talking about as well. So definitely anything that encourages government agencies to learn more about this, learn about the people in this industry. I mean, the name of the bill sounds nice. It's all about like innovation and supporting innovation. But I mean, that's what they did with the Patriot Act, right? They create a nice name for something and it ends up being a nightmare. So we'll see what happens. I'm cautiously optimistic, but I may take that back as soon as we get details of this because it could be a total nightmare. Ben, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, this is just sort of standard process for these things, right? Like, we have the IRS, this independent body coming out with their own, kind of actions on this. And then you have lawmakers getting involved and a lot of crosstalk between different, congressional members and then other parts of government to try and get all of these disparate entities together around a cohesive set of regulations. And I think that'd be positive in the sense that it would offer some predictability for crypto holders, which is such a big issue here because we don't know what's coming down the pipe. But this is, again, I'll wait until I see the report. This is a little bit of the announcement about the announcement, like I like to say. So the body is convened, but we don't know what it's going to look like. The cybersecurity stuff and the, custodial stuff, I think is going to be really interesting. That's going to have some of the implications you were referencing, Naomi, that could resonate down the line. But to me, this feels like one more incremental step forward. And, we'll see when this report comes out, if it's caught up to things like DeFi and everything else. Zach, what you got?
I mean, it's called the Eliminate Barriers to Innovation Act of 2021, Ben. I mean, what's the problem
sounds
here?
So positive.
Sounds so positive.
That can only apply to one thing, right? We've never heard that kind of bill name before.
Yeah, the Lawful Access to Encrypted Data Act. I mean, it's lawful. It says it right there in the name of it. It must be good. Or the Earn It bill, good. Which is explicitly to stop, children getting hurt. Who could hate anything that stops children? No, they always create these wonderfully noble sounding things. I think it was Snowden who said that anytime you have a great name of one of these acts, look deeper because it's probably horrendous. So although this does talk about eliminating barriers to innovation, I really want to love this. And they do talk about all the different representatives, but they also say that just to start off with, the group would just consist of people from CFTC and the SEC. So how long it's going to take them to actually get feedback from the wider community? Is this just going to be an unending just a government bureaucracy? And then maybe they might occasionally ask opinion. Like that's very different to actually having having an entity that is comprised of lots of different members from the wider community. So.
Yeah, we're also sort of in the early days of partisanship around these issues too. I think it's yet to be cemented as a Democrat or Republican issue. But if you look at the composition of these bill sponsors, I think it's 4 Republicans and 1 Democrat who submitted this to the House. So I think we are in the early days of seeing the ossification of where Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies fall in the political spectrum.
People don't know whether they should like Bitcoin or hate Bitcoin because their parties haven't told them what to believe yet.
I don't know what to think. Ben, I saw your hand shoot up. Yep.
Yeah, we covered this. So in the before a pandemic, CoinDesk went down and covered, the Democratic primaries in Charleston. And so I was on the ground there and talking to voters, and, they were fairly actually somewhat knowledgeable around what was Libra at the time, and were distrustful of that given it was coming from Facebook, but also were interested in the idea of digital currencies and CBDCs. But they had signaled, and they told me explicitly, they really hadn't heard anything from the candidates about this. And so, Naomi, to your point, they hadn't really made up their mind. And so, if that kind of downstream educational aspects and the signaling can start to occur here, sure, we're going to see kind of like tribal political warfare around it, but it might give people more of an idea of what they should be getting involved in.
I think the fact that they've acknowledged that they need input from the larger community is a step in the right direction. I have to say, I was really happy to read that they're going to have all these different representatives involved. I don't know at what stage down the line, but I think it's a good step that they finally acknowledge that is needed.
Here for process. Let's change gears and go to NFTs. The dark side of NFTs. Ben, take it away.
All right, guys. So news, I'm really interested in NFTs again. It only took 1 day. But no, this is in relation to a really, really interesting story. After I spouted off about Taco Bell creating NFTs and everything else, a hacker has created a NFT of a zero-day exploit. And that's basically an NFT that would give somebody instructions about how to execute one that they've found. Now, zero-day exploit is essentially a kind of large-scale vulnerability that is not known to the parties involved, that affects a large number of people and requires kind of a hardware or software upgrade and patch to be issued to fix it. Now, to me, the one that was made into an NFT is seemingly fairly low stakes. And I should say OpenSea, where it was hosted, has since been taken the auction down. But this just opens up a whole list of questions about, what NFTs could be used for and what some of the, darker sides of it might actually end up being. But first, somebody in the group take this away. I could talk forever, but I want to get everybody else involved.
I want to focus in on it being delisted from the OpenSea platform. I think that's actually really interesting that that marketplace operator stepped in and censored these transactions from taking place. So I think that's really interesting. I know that there may be talk of decentralized exchanges for these ERC 721 tokens, and interesting moves like this may make the world of NFTs even more permissionless going forward, which I think would be really a bit scary. So, I don't know. I wanted to focus in on that and see, Ben, first of all, sort of what's your take on the ramifications of them taking action last night to remove this from their marketplace?
Yeah, so I've got a whole story coming later on this where I'm going to get into all these details. I'm waiting for OpenSea to get back to me actually explaining their reasoning and when they took this down, actually, because this is not something you've often seen on these platforms as far to my knowledge. I spoke with some lawyers for this forthcoming piece, and they kind of said that this isn't illegal to post this content necessarily, where we could get into tricky legal territory if somebody buys it and then uses that exploit to invade somebody's system or something like that. To be clear, like this one that is being NFT'd right now is fairly low stakes. It involves kind of a DDoS attack, a distributed denial of service attack on a game engine. So it really only affects, about 28 sort of online games. This isn't like high level security stuff that we're necessarily talking about, but it sets a really kind of tricky precedent from an ethical perspective about, what if somebody gets involved in this and they're trying to sell something that is a larger level zero-day exploit? Those are big deals. And then particularly in a completely distributed system, we don't know who could buy those. And that's another point a lawyer raised with me, was just saying, like, if you don't know who the buyer is, there's a lot of implications around national security and other things that come into effect here. So this was just the first ever time that I've seen this happen and I've heard of this happening. And to me, it was sort of a use case for NFTs that I hadn't even thought of, but it shows that these things are all just tools, and people are going to be able to use them kind of however they want to, for better or for worse.
Yeah, for sure. I think that we also have to realize that all these NFT platforms, they're all experimenting in very different ways. So some of them are saying, well, what you see is what you get, but you'll just have the ownership of something. Some people are saying, well, this is going to be kind of like Satoshi's box back in 2013. I don't know what happened with that site, but it was a site where you pay and you unlock something larger, right? So some NFT platforms are operating kind of like that. Like you buy this thing, but what you get actually is hidden, and you get that after, which seems to be the 0-day thing. And then, you've got all these kind of collaborative, exciting areas, but we do have to realize there's a darker side to this, as you mentioned, Ben, because we could be talking about child porn. We could be talking about all of these things. Like if you unlock this digital asset, you get these other things. And if we're talking about decentralized marketplaces, it does get this really kind of murky territory, right? Where people are doing really bad things and other people are doing good things. So how do you deal with the underlying technology? And that's the kind of the problem with tech. Well, actually, it's also the good thing about tech is inherently neutral. Yeah. So we've got to find ways to go after, the criminals. And I just hope that's what happens here, is that we focus on the people who are doing bad things with this and not focus on criminalizing or smearing the tech itself. Like, I hope that NFTs don't get a bad rap because some people are doing bad things with it. Obviously, government or law enforcement should be focusing on the people who are actually doing the bad things.
Yeah, and this doesn't rise to that level necessarily. And I think it's important to say that, there are underground marketplaces for 0-day hacks. There are bug bounty programs for 0-day hacks. So this was really somebody looking at kind of what they think is the sort of an engineer saying the beauty and arts of an exploitation like this, and thinking of it as digital art around computer code. So this would exist elsewhere if it wasn't an NFT. But that to me was a really interesting use case of NFTs I hadn't thought of. But Anna, I know you were kind of interested in this story. So what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, you actually just said what I was about to say, that there is already a huge darknet market for stuff like that, for cyber malware, for any other nefarious things. But actually here we see that people are bringing more, they're kind of bringing the more publicity to it, now. They're bringing more attention to the fact that this kind of business, this kind of trade exists. And you don't have to go to some, deep web marketplace to see these things sold. I mean, now you have, because OpenSea removed it. But again, I'm still not sure about the non-fungibility part of this. So basically, anybody who buys this thing can then copy paste the code and then sell it on the dark market for other money. And the seller would have no idea that what he sold as an NFT is going to be resold in another form. So I'm still, the only thing that bothers me here is this non-fungibility, which is quite ephemeric, I guess.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm trying to unpack some elements of that. It's a little bit unclear to me, but on OpenSea and kind of his cited reasoning for doing this was that, he can set secondary sales fees from his marketplace. And so he could profit each time this was resold. So that story will be coming out later today. We can dive into more of the details, but what do we got coming up next, y'all?
I'll help you out on that one. We have a break coming up next. And then after the break, we have Bitcoin scaling solution Lightning Network meeting card payments giant Visa. Sounds like an interesting link up. Let's learn about it after the break.
Welcome back to The Hash, everyone. So big news on the Ripple Moneygram front. We all know that they started a partnership in 2018 and then Moneygram started using the Ripple network 2019. Well, today, CEO of Ripple, Brad Garlinghouse, announced that Ripple and MGI have decided to wind down their current partnership agreement. Both are apparently committed to revisiting it in the future. Obviously, this comes as a result of the current lawsuit that is against Ripple by the SEC, where unclear as so what's going to happen there. The SEC is claiming that Ripple or XRP is a security, so they're suing Ripple. But then Brad goes on to say that while the lack of crypto regulatory framework has needlessly muddied the waters for US businesses and consumers, there's no denying what Ripple and Moneygram have achieved together. And it sort of goes back to what we were talking about at the start of the show today about how there is no real regulatory clarity and businesses kind of jump in, they try to do something, then the SEC turns around and says, actually, what you've been doing is illegal all along. So it is a kind of murky territory here. So Ripple has been paying MoneyGram to use the XRP token in international settlements since 2019. They've done really well. Big numbers have gone through MoneyGram. I'm going to toss this to the group. What do you guys think about this winding down? It kind of seems sad to me. I'm not a fan of Ripple or XRP. I don't use MoneyGram, but I don't like seeing businesses trying to innovate in the money space get shut down because of regulatory unclarity. It seems kind of sad. Zach, what are your thoughts?
I mean, those are my thoughts too. I mean, pour one out for one of the stranger marriages in crypto land that has lasted through thick and thin. You know, MoneyGram even stood by Ripple in the immediate wake of this legal action against them, and for it to kind of go out with a whimper like this is a little bit sad. So that's my take. Yeah, press F in the chat. Yeah, I mean, this was the promise, right? This was going to be, the remittance use case that Ripple and XRP could propel into mainstream adoption the world over. And for this to come to an unceremonious close, back to the drawing board for what Ripple is seeking to accomplish.
What's happening with the SEC and Ripple right now? Like, is there a timeline on that? Is this the final nail in the coffin for Ripple? Where does Ripple stand today?
So it's ongoing, and no decision has been come to. Generally, with these things, you'll have a back and forth, and they'll try to find a settlement where they say, yes, we were a security, but we'll pay you money, and then we're allowed to operate. Kind of seems like a big a racket to me. The SEC just gets a bunch of money and then goes after the next one. But my personal cynical take on government action. And I think that a lot of these companies, what they're really hoping for is for clarity for the SEC to say, well, you were a security back then, but going forward, you're not. Like, a lot of these companies really want the SEC to say, you're decentralized enough now that you're no longer a security, or there's enough utility that you're no longer a security. You pass the Howey test. So we really don't know what's going to happen there. Zach?
Yeah, that was sort of the outcome that, Block One famously came to with the SEC and its settlement over their, $4 billion plus ICO for the EOS token. So, I think that the MoneyGram announcement certainly presents a future in which there is some resolution and this happy union can come back together. But as it stands now, the lawyers are working all this through, and there is no clear timeline as to when resolution will come. Anna?
And also when sorry, Anna.
So I just wanted to know that it's kind of ironic that Ripple is one of the most, it's one of those few blockchain startups that were like the most willing to work with the regulators and, right. To address any concerns. And then it ended up, the most heavily beaten one. And we saw like the exchanges freezing XRP trading and the partnerships falling apart. So it's it's kind of paradoxical that they started as the most compliant, like law abiding and stuff, and then they still didn't avoid getting hit so hard.
Yeah, I want to maybe ask the group what they think of the what I think is a very underground secret war against crypto going on by the SEC right now. I would guess that like half of all crypto companies that have tokens have secret subpoenas right now, just judging from what information I've received and what I think is going on right now. It does seem that lots of companies are in negotiations that are not public yet. And I'm wondering what you guys think the future is of this is going to be. SEC, as we know, started off with low-hanging fruit, just kind of testing the waters to see what they could do. And a lot of companies settled, which created a nice precedent for them to go after larger companies. What is the future? Are they just going to keep steamrolling until they kill blockchain? Because it doesn't seem like it's off the table.
Well, they can't kill blockchain. They can't go after Bitcoin after all, right?
So one will remain.
Well, it is an interesting question. Like, even if they went after the founders of Uniswap, they could not necessarily stop Uniswap. So I'm curious who your sources are here, Naomi, and I would love to talk with you after the show about where you're hearing such things. But I don't know. I mean, I think, is there a raft of these things lurking in the background? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But yeah. I don't know. Ben,
the thing is, the problem with these things is that companies can't talk about it. Things like national security letters from the FBI, obviously companies are ganked from saying that they've received a national security letter. You have secret subpoenas and lawsuits and all of these things. And the companies I know have been in settlement talks for years for these things. Like there's this real brooding war. Sorry, Ben.
No, I was just going to say my DMs are open.
Yeah. For sure. No, it is interesting. Anna, what you said was such a great point that they really kind of tried to brand themselves as this government coin. And that's why they got so much flack from the crypto community, right? They wanted to work so much with government and kind of become that settlement layer between banks. And obviously banks said, well, if there's going to be a settlement layer, we're going to create JP Morgan coin. We're going to do it ourselves and reap those benefits. So it didn't really help them. And now the SEC is going after them anyway. Zach.
Speaking of settlement layers, let's talk about Lightning with Anna. Anna, what do you got?
All right. Actually, our colleague Colin Harper, who's doing a ton of great work describing the technical development of Bitcoin, wrote this great story about the startup called Moon, which helps you spend Bitcoin via Lightning Network, shopping on ordinary US-based merchants' websites. So you basically get this browser extension from Moon. You connect it to your Lightning wallet, or you open a Lightning channel with Moon. And while you're shopping at Walmart website or Amazon or Sephora or wherever, when you choose to buy something, you use that extension and it generates the Lightning invoice for you and a prepaid card. So you pay this Lightning invoice with your Bitcoin, and you can spend that card on a website. So this is like TLDR of what's going on. And an interesting part here is that on one hand, it's cool that there is another way to spend your Bitcoin in real life, if people want to do that. But on the other hand, if you think about the mechanics of it, with Lightning, because you need to open a payment channel to send someone Bitcoin over this second layer, you need to lock your Bitcoin in it. And there is the entire process of, opening channels, of running your Lightning node, and so on and so forth. So people will most likely probably use the channels that their wallets are opening for them. And in this sense, are we just moving to a new kind of banking, like the banking 3.0 or 4.0, when you still pay via an intermediary, but this is a Bitcoin native intermediary, just because you don't want, to do all that technical heavy lifting with the Lightning? I don't know. What do you think, guys?
It's a great question.
Maybe the question.
That's some of the biggest, criticisms of Lightning is that you do need people to run these channels for them. What is the economic incentive to lock up your Bitcoin for that period of time unless you're charging people fees to use your network, in which case we've added the fee problem back into the equation. So, there have been a lot of criticism against Lightning. That being said, I think that things like these are positive developments if they can help encourage use of cryptocurrency in everyday life. I know that Bitrefill does something very similar, and they give you like 10% back every time you use Lightning through them. So that kind of stuff is cool. I really like seeing it. But you bring up a great point, Anna. That's why a lot of people don't use Bitcoin and don't see Lightning as being as useful as some of the cheaper altcoins out there for everyday use.
Yeah, I think maybe a few weeks ago I covered Opera integrating with Simplex so that they could do fiat in browser for purchasing cryptocurrencies. And I think why not try all these things, right? It's up to the user if they want to actually move to that step. But if you give people optionality, I think it's worth experimenting with because, there are going to be these secondary layers that are going to be really important for any sort of microtransactions that you're trying to do. And so if you give people choices, even if there are fees associated with them that might mimic the more traditional financial system, it's one step closer to figuring out a couple of different alternatives. So that's kind of my thoughts here, is just create more things and we'll see who comes.
Good thoughts all around. And stepping back, I think it's interesting that Visa is really taking the lead on doing these Lightning experiments. This is not the first time that a Lightning startup has participated in their fast track program. Notably, they work with Jack Mallers and Strike, which does similar, sort of Lightning enabled, sort of Venmo-esque cross-border payments and whatnot. So the fact that this is another kind of example of Visa taking the lead on trying to make Bitcoin payments work is actually quite interesting. And I think there's certainly a company to be watching the space right now. So that's sort of my broader take on the names involved in this one.
Yeah, I think it's great for a mainstream audience. Naomi, I initially thought about you and the friends you have who are living off the grid completely on Bitcoin. And I was like, they would never use this, but this is great for a mainstream audience.
No, that's such a great point. I mean, sorry, go ahead, Ben.
No, take it away. Let's hear about the off the grid folks.
Off the grid folks. Yeah, we've talked about before about like these custodial Lightning wallets that have started to censor transactions and people who are still championing them as being the future of payments. I think that as long as people still have control over their own money, I'm happy for whatever, people to use. I definitely agree with you, Jen, that you can have these kind of hybrid things or custodial systems that are great for beginners. So there's a spectrum of use cases in the crypto world. I encourage people to explore all of it. I personally am going to be at the far end of the spectrum. That's an interesting way to put it. But you understand what I mean? Like, I think that there are lots of people who just believe so strongly in having control of your own money that something like this is not going to be interesting at all to them. And I think that's totally fine. And as Ben said, the more options we have, the better, because competition is going to lift all of us and provide us all cool tools. Ben?
Yeah, and zooming way out to kind of, to the 1,000-foot level, Zach, like you were referencing a bit. I just see this also as a really interesting, just another data point in this larger, I think of it as a friction, relationship between sort of the origins of crypto and sort of large institutional players getting behind it. And that's where we're seeing a lot of the value come from, is this mainstream adoption by the same financial system that crypto is supposed to usurp. And so I think this is just another example of like, where does that line begin and end, or does it? Like if people want to use Visa because they trust it, sure. But is that like using crypto in the sense that it was intended for? I think that's still an open question. So this is another example of that, but a debate that I think is, going to be ongoing for years.
For sure. We'll have to see how all of that works out. But we're going to take a short break now. And coming up, Rob Gronkowski releasing digital trading card NFTs of his best Super Bowl moments. Details on that to come.
Welcome back to The Hash. Great to have you with us as we discuss all the latest and greatest in crypto. Well, the Gronk is doing the work for the people. He was on TMZ educating his fans on NFTs. Let's take a look.
Non-fungible tokens are digital assets that are unique and limited. They can't be duplicated or split up. They have many uses, including for digital collectibles, music, digital artwork, digital trading cards, and in-game tokens. So that's kind of the brief description of what NFT is. And for me, it's basically going to be like a digital trading card.
All right, so that was Rob Gronkowski, 4-time Super Bowl champion. He's releasing 5 limited trading cards as part of a digital collection he's calling the Championship NFT Collection. So I've said before on the show that I wish that the Kings of Leon would do this for their fans so they know exactly how to participate in an NFT. And so, I mean, I think what Rob is doing is great. He's even set up a website with step-by-step instructions on how to get a wallet and how to participate in the auction. So, I mean, I'm here for it. He went to TMZ, the most mainstream platform I think he could have gone to. Curious what your thoughts are. Ben, you're back on the NFT train today. Why don't you start us off?
I mean, how much did TMZ have to pay for that one? That's my question initially. But hey, no, I think this is interesting. I like the step-by-step aspect. If you're going to talk to people about this, like really try and break it down as opposed to just, going through, I don't know, whatever third party there may be, or just kind of saying like, we're doing this thing and kind of tying it to this NFT thing, which is huge buzzword right now. So to me, like that might be an appealing aspect of it. But again, this feels a lot like the marketing bubble around NFTs just continuing to inflate.
All right, I got to take. It's going to be interesting. So NBA Top Shot has led the charge here, and that's a league licensed product. Has all the moments, all the good graphics, all the team logos. I don't know if you guys had baseball cards when you were little, but those baseball cards that like didn't get the league license, and so therefore they had to like Photoshop out like the team logos and stuff. That's the first thing I noticed when I saw these Gronk cards. Exactly. I'm like, where is the Patriots logo? Where is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers logo? And that to me, I don't know. I didn't have strong opinions about this until just this morning, but that to me is like, I don't know, highly disappointing. So I think if you can get those 3 letters attached to your NFT, the way the NBA Top Shot has done so, I think that may help these things take off. Because look at those things. That's not super satisfying. Come on. That's not great.
Well, we talked about yesterday.
Hey, look at that blank helmet. I see you, blank helmet. Anyway, so I mean, it'd be cool if it'd be cool to see like the band. This is like the band model, right? Like this is like Kings of Leon and like Lil Yachty and Post Malone and Kings of Portugal or Portugal the Man or whatever. This is like the band model of NFTs in the sports world, right? Like this is the band and they're doing their own thing and they're listening on OpenSea or whatever they choose. But in doing so, in empowering those individual creators or athletes in this instance, you lose the cachet associated with the imagery and the league. So I'm really interested to see actually if that turns anyone off besides me. It probably won't, but I think that's sort of the we're at the next step of sports NFT craze. And will it go athlete centric or will it continue to go league centric as we're seeing with Sarare and Top Shot and others? So I don't know. That's me.
It did turn me off. I never collected baseball cards as a kid, though, Zach. But we talked about yesterday the NBA being one of the most progressive leagues. I don't really follow sports that closely, but is the NFL a league that would adopt something like this? Has there been any kind of indication as to their progressiveness?
I mean, money speaks.
Make the owners money.
Yeah. I think be it the NBA or the NHL or the NFL or the MLB, like the money is probably the top consideration here. So I'm sure I don't know, but I'm sure that other leagues are knocking on Dapper Labs' door, knocking on Chili's is this other one that we saw recently. They're knocking on the doors of these folks to say, hey, do Top Shot for us. We want to have that. Whether or not that's going to materialize anytime soon, I think is anyone's guess. But certainly as these big dollar figures are bandied about in CNBC and TMZ and every website in the world, makes it a bit more likely to happen. Ben, what do you got?
Yeah, I think it would be interesting too. I mean, the licensing agreements and stuff that would have to be worked out around some of these things, like even like NCAA, like the video game, you don't have players' names on the back of the jerseys because you have to navigate this incredibly complex space. So I think it'll be interesting to see how this model of, kind of athletic NFTs can fit into pre-existing revenue models for some of these leagues. And I think that's a hugely open question, not to mention that, Dapper Labs and Top Shot, you have NBA players that are invested in that. So they're directly making money off of that. And I don't know of a parallel NFL or MLB one. So we'll see about that. But how that money trickles down to players would be a huge question for any sort of development in larger sports leagues in my mind.
All right. Well, we'll leave it there, and then the Zach Seward in his backyard baseball NFT. We'll get to that one maybe in a couple of days.
Oh, gee.
Yeah. Woohoo. Anyway, so that's the hash for today, Tuesday, March 9th. Thanks for sticking with us. We had a good time as always. I mean, I hope you did too. So, for Naomi Brockwell, for Ben Powers, for Jen Sanasi, and for special guest Anna Badakova, we will see you again tomorrow. Thanks for doing it.
Till then.
Bye, guys.